All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
What is going on, SHIPIT Nation? We're back Thursday here, December 14th. We're almost to Christmas. We got NFL on tap tonight. But, Hoop, I'll tell you what, these NBA games might be more entertaining than this NFL game. Obviously, you, Tambo, and Title broke that game down over on the Made Media Network. Anyone here who have not checked that video out, head over there. Did think you guys talked through that slate pretty well, gave us some angles. Obviously, it's a gross game, but everyone's got the same game. But we got 7 games in the NBA here tonight, this evening. Hoop, I'll bring you in right away. How you doing, man? How's your Thursday?
Yeah, doing well. Like you said, we got the Thursday night game kicks off week, 15 of the NFL season. Not the greatest. And then Chargers, Raiders, low total, a lot of backup players in there. But, I thought we found some decent angles. If you haven't obviously checked that out, check it out after this NBA show. But a lot of the content already starting to drop, obviously, for the Thursday night slate. I got my captain plays already up, going to add the exposure and whatnot after the show. And then, I got 7 NBA games. We'll dive through them. Obviously, some big totals and whatnot. Here's some injury news that we can digest. But it kicks off a busy week because we got the 3-game NFL slate on Saturday. Got obviously the full NFL slate, UFC pay-per-view event. So a lot going on, and we definitely have you covered in all those areas.
Yeah, you named it. All the sports, big MMA content, big MMA card this weekend. I know, obviously, our little bias, but our MMA content, I believe, is the best, hands down, in the industry. Yeah. We've shown that with screenshots, and it's not like we have a massive team, right? You got 2 people to listen to. You got Title and you got Marley, 2 of the best in the industry, right? Title just prints at everything he does. Obviously, you've been in those MMA streets, sweeping the floor with those. Freaking Tambo's been in there. Who runs better than Tambo, right? Tambo looks at the content. I mean, the guy forgets about a 10K, 15, 20K shipper in MMA because he's shipping 100K every other day in NFL, it feels like. But we got you covered for everything. And NHL, right? NHL, obviously, not a lot of people talk about NHL, but NHL still going every night. I got you covered with that. Slate plan. A lot of our guys in the Discord have been printing money. I know Lay the House continues to smash in there. K Gould's in the Discord every night. And a lot of other members, all things. If you guys are not a member, head over to shipitnation.com. Click on join now, best all-in rate in the industry. No promo code going right now, Hoop. No Santa Claus, no Santa Hoop, no Tambo Claus, none of that. We gave the discounts for multiple times. Obviously, there'll be more coming around likely, but we're still the cheapest all-in rate in the industry. So head over there, check us out. If not, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Helps us out a ton here. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers on this channel. Say hi to a couple people in the chat here. We got Paraby in here. We got Mark. We got Wins a lot. Hopefully you ship a lot too as well. We love to see that. Joe's Madness in here. Brian, everybody in here. We appreciate y'all tuning in. Hoop, first game on the slate here. You're pulling it up there. You got Cleveland. You got Boston. 225 is the total in this one. Boston at home, 9-point favorites. Injury news. Porzingis and Jaylen Brown remain questionable. I haven't seen any news come through on those 2 guys. Obviously, if one of them misses or both of them miss, obviously Jason Tatum, massive boost. Drew Holiday, massive boost. Derek White, massive boost. You'll get some value plays like a guy like Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornett, some of those guys. But break it down right now as it is. Basically we got them both projected to be in right now. So let's say they both play. Where are you going in this one, Cleveland, Boston?
Yeah, this is not the most appealing game, obviously, on the slate. I mean, Boston games are difficult. Cleveland with one of the lower team totals on the slate. Now, the way it would get interesting, obviously, is if, both these guys are out, then we'd be taking a look at some of the Boston guys, like you mentioned, Jason Tatum, Drew Holiday, Derek White, and then, even more like Peyton Pritchard, like you said, would all be in play. It's looking like they most likely are in. So really the only play here for me personally would be Jason Tatum. And then it's like, you got to take a look at him versus the other studs on the slate. If you bring everyone else back into the conversation, start looking at how does he rank versus the rest of the field here, moderately, the projections like Jokic better. Luka obviously has a spend. Sabonis, it likes more in that same price range. So if all those guys are in, probably nothing for me in this game. If they're out, Tatum becomes probably a priority play, but I just don't see myself getting to any of the guys on the Cleveland side. It's like it's going to be Tatum, and honestly, probably won't play him. Or if you're building 150, you can obviously play him. But in my main team, I wouldn't play him if those guys are in. If they're out, then he becomes a little bit more of a priority on the slate. Yeah,
no, I definitely like that. I mean, Drew Holiday has an okay matchup here, but man, it's just tough to play Drew Holiday at 6,700 when, especially if Jaylen Brown's in there, Porzingis is in there, Jason Tatum. I mean, there's only one basketball, right? There's a lot of usage to command there, and Drew Holiday's fine, kind of taking the back seat. I think if I had to pull one Boston piece, I think it would be Derek White, just because we got him projected for 35 minutes here. He's been very, very he's been good in the minutes he's getting. He's got a little bit of above average matchup here. He checks out decent on my end here. Obviously, you can always go to a contrarian spend up in Jason Tatum here, but probably not for me against this Cleveland team. Overall, I'm kind of under on this game. I think this is going to be a defensive game here. Boston, obviously, very, very good basketball team. I think they slow it down here. So maybe Derek White, but overall, not a ton of interest in that one. And we go from one not great game to the next not great game here. I believe this is the lowest total on the slate here. 217 is the total. Chicago and Miami. Chicago 4-point dogs here. Injury news, Alex Caruso is the only one that I'm seeing really questionable that matters. This game is probably one of the easiest cross-off games I've seen in a while here. I can't really pull anything, but do you see any kind of dime in the rough, low owned? I do want to talk about one guy that's getting ownership here is Jamal Cain at 3,400 there. Played 29 minutes last game, put up 26.25 DraftKings points. Any interest in going back to him as a value piece here? Obviously, we don't have him projecting very well right now, but hit on Jamal Cain because I do see ownership going his way.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly about it on the slate. $3,400 can make a lot work. If you want to play two studs on the slate, like not locking in, but playing a $3,400 guy, makes sense. And these $3,400 guys, these cheap guys on a 7-game slate, even if they bust, like it's not necessarily what they do, it's what it does for your lineup, and it gives you the ability to play more studs. So he would be probably the only play on the slate in this game. This game is 9 to 10 points lower in terms of the total than every other game on the slate. There is just not much appeal here. Jimmy Butler is kind of the only guy showing as like a positive value here for us. And there's just other guys I'd rather play in this range. Even Tatum, in the game before, Tatum is like, $600 more expensive. I'd find a way to get to him over Butler. And I don't even like Tatum all that much. So nothing here. It's Kane or, move on essentially for me.
Yeah, I do want to bring up the Kane point because if you you look at the value plays in the slate, there's not a lot of value plays. So I do think people go more mid-tier route, and that's why you're seeing. Obviously, we're going to touch on that Portland-Utah game, right? The game of the slate that everyone wants to talk about. I mean, you're seeing 3 Utah guys right now projected to be all right around 40% ownership in that 5K range. That's why Jamal Cain could be interesting, get you on a little bit different roster construction. Now, I do think a lot of teams will go 3 of those 4 guys, Talen Horton-Tucker, Sexton, Olynyk, and Jamal Cain. I mean, if you just grab any optimizer, obviously our partnerships here with the Solver, we got our own projections. These aren't the Solver projections. These are our own projection model and different than the industry. But any projection source you use today, points per dollar wise, if you sort by points per dollar, not just our value rankings, but points per dollar in any optimizer, those 4 guys are going to be the top. I think a lot of teams go all 4, and majority, if not all the teams, go at least 3 of the 4.
Yeah, you can see. I just went ahead and ran 10 teams just to see what happens. Like, just to get a picture without changing anything. Didn't no changes here. Just ran it on the Solver, which we're obviously partnered with. Like you said, Kane is showing up in all 10 of those teams. Sexton all 10. Horton Tucker all 10, like that. We know where the ownership's going on the slate. Like it's not that hard to figure out.
Yeah, exactly. No, great breakdown. I do see some talk right now in the chat about Vooch should eat here. I mean Vooch is at 8K, right? There's no Bam on the other side for
he's playing well, actually. You look at it, he's been solid. 43, 47, 40, 58. Like, all right, maybe. Yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah, it just comes down to let me go to center real quick. It goes down to right. You got Olynyk at 5,300, Rich is obviously going to be a talking point. You got Rudy Gobert, you got Chet Holmgren in that same range, right? Chet against the Kings 7,400, Rudy Gobert 7,500. You got Porzingis, obviously. I don't have a ton of interest in him, but you got DeAndre Ayton little there. So, I mean, Vooch as a contrarian spend, hey, this is a spot you can play a guy like Vooch, right? He just went for 58 against Jokic. They're in Denver. You could see him. It's just I'm not too keen on been playing these Bulls all year, right? The Rosens and Vucevic's. It just seems like I never get these guys right, but that is an interesting play. Personally, I'm probably going to be off this game completely outside of a Jamal Cain. I know that's probably the chalky route to go, but that's just kind of how I'm seeing the slate personally. But if you do have a take, go ahead and roll with Vooch. He has been playing pretty good, and he is sub 8K here. It would know Zach LaVine, so could see it. Next game here, Minnesota and Dallas hoop. This one, we're looking at a 230 total, close spread, 1 point spread here. Minnesota's been very good defensively all season long, but got to bring it up. You got to bring up Luka. Anytime Luka's on the slate, I mean, this guy continues to just, I mean, it feels like his floor is almost 60, 65 DraftKings points at this point. Obviously, he went for 93 a couple games ago in overtime there against OKC. But 11-9, man, we just talked about the value plays on this slate. It's going to be tough to fit Luka. Jamal Cain's pretty much the only value play that I'm seeing that makes that I can actually stomach, right, rostering. Can you get to Luka tonight here? I do see decent amount of ownership going his way, likely 30 to 40% ownership here. Touch on Luka, and then Edwards, Gobert are the other two guys that we have popping a little bit here as well.
Yeah, I guess, on the Minnesota side, we got to see what happens with some of this news. I mean, Edwards is questionable, McDaniels, McLaughlin, all listed as questionable. So, as of now, not a ton of interest on the Minnesota side, but if a couple of those guys are ruled out, then definitely have some interest. Like Towns would get the boost, Gobert would get the boost. Guys like that would come into the conversation a little bit more. And then if Edwards is in, I think, he's fine. As well, with Luka, if I'm going in this range, I think I honestly prefer him over Jokic tonight. I mean, he's just been so good. 11-9. So let's see, you go 11-9, and you got $5,400 left for your remaining spots. Let's just say you want to play a guy like Kane. See if he pops up here. You plug Kane in. Where does that leave us? You're almost 6K per spot. So you can definitely make it happen with Luka. What's going to happen, though, on these teams, though, you're going to see is a lot of
those Utah guys
to fill in. So it's going to be Kane, 3 Utah guys, and Luka. And honestly, man, if you do play Luka, it's hard to not do that. Like, it really is. So you're going to see a lot of common builds on these spend type guys, which, there's just nothing you can do. It's a 7-game slate, and there's not a ton of value. And there's one spot that stands out as the clear value. But, if you're building multiple teams, I mean, you certainly want Luka, exposure to Luka. Like, you wouldn't want to fade him. Definitely like him in terms of getting him on the main team. Just a matter of what we get in terms of value. And his play could get a little bit better. I think Hardaway Jr. is now probable, I want to say. I just read that. So either way, Luka's a good play. On the Minnesota side, it's very contingent on whether or not these guys are in or out. Like if they're all in, Edwards, I think, is fine. Gobert, yeah, sure, I wouldn't mind him. Maybe some Karl Anthony Towns. But if a few of them are out, then you could come to more Minnesota guys. So we need to kind of see the news on this situation. Yeah,
I do want to bring up Dante Exum too. I mean, this guy's been playing out of his mind, right, since the Kyrie injury. Between him and Hardaway, it seems like those two are definitely the two guys that you want to kind of go load up on around. Obviously, if you can't get to Luka, because if Luka, right, doesn't get his 90 or his 80 points, right, that he's gotten before, it's because likely that obviously Hardaway and Exum are taking shots away from Luka. Obviously, Luka does a lot, but look at last game. Hardaway against the Lakers took 21 shot attempts, right? Scored 32 real life points. That's kind of what you need out of Hardaway, right? He's not going to pick up a ton of peripherals. So I don't love that a ton at 6K with a guy that's pretty scoring dependent in a guy like Tim Hardaway. Dante Exum, though, 6,600. I mean, he's been involved, point guard, right? He's got 7 assists, 7, 6, 3. Gonna maybe get some steals there. He's been shooting the ball pretty well. His numbers are a little inflated, right? Last game he did shoot 8 from 10 from the field, 7 of 9 from 3. So take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, could he keep it up? Yeah, he could. I'm just looking at other ways if you can't get up to Luka on how you could attack this pretty good total here. Obviously, close spread. And then on the Minnesota side, heavily reliant, obviously, on injury news. Van Edwards and McDaniels both missed. That's a lot of usage to go to. Guys like Mike Conley, right? Slow-Mo Anderson, if you want to go to and die on that hill again, which personally, I'm team never Kyle Anderson. So you can take that for what it's worth. But Naz Reid would get a boost. Yeah, Naz Reid would probably be my preferred guy if McDaniels does miss there. Do like that. So obviously you got to rely on news. This game starts an hour after the first 2 games lock. So we probably won't get that news before those first 2 games lock. You could wait because, again, we both didn't like those first 2 games very much. I do think this is kind of the game that people are going to wait for news and start their teams around this game outside of maybe a Jamal Cain early. From a roster standpoint, from the overall slate perspective, that seems to be the common route because it's 15 minutes after that football game kicks off their hoop. So people will be getting their teams in and wait for this news and then start their NBA teams. Is kind of how I'm seeing this slate outside of maybe a Jamal Cain early. Yeah. Talked a lot on that game. Obviously news is pretty dependent in that game, right? There's a lot of news that can change that game up in terms of spends, but obviously Luka, anytime he's on the slate, you can go to him. Next game, same thing. We got another stud on the slate, 12K. It's Jokic here. I do like Jokic at home, but Jamal Murray is back now for Denver here. I think he's coming in with a questionable tag this game.
Yeah, he's officially probable now, so he's playing.
Yeah, he should play. So Denver basically fully healthy here. In terms of ownership, I mean, I'm seeing Nick Claxton get a little bit of ownership, but in this one, the total in this one here, let me just pull it up real quick.
At 230.
231. Yeah, 231.
231.
Obviously a big spread here, right? Denver 9-point favorites at home here. Can you get to Jokic here? Obviously, it sounded like you were Luka over Jokic, but I'm seeing sub 5% ownership on Jokic for $100 more anytime Jokic is at home. And you do get the flop leg spot, right? Obviously, Jokic I believe he got ejected, right, against Chicago, where he put up 25 DraftKings points in 16 minutes. You could see a little pissed off Jokic back at home here, coming back after getting tossed out of that game. Are you joining the revenge, the little flop leg, pissed off Jokic narrative here at home against Brooklyn here?
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize the ownership discrepancy was that much. I mean, we have 5, and then Luka showing had like 35. So Jokic just has to be a really good play, in tournaments for that reason. It's one of the easiest ways to get different on an NBA slate when you can see a huge ownership difference in the studs or the big time spends on the slate. You immediately are competing with less, and it's going to be hard to play both these guys. So that's probably the reason why he's coming in low owned and center. We have some good value at center. So I guess it does all kind of add up and make sense when you think about it. But Jokic just has to be a good play at 5%. I mean, he could just absolutely nuke this slate. I mean, what it would take is him to beat Luka, obviously, and then, some of these other value centers to essentially bust a little bit. So very interested in him. Jamal Murray does have a good price tag, $7,300. I don't think he's the worst play in the world. But after that, it dries up quick in this game, like with Claxton, $6,700. I don't absolutely hate him, pretty consistent, not a building block or anything. But if I had that sort of money, 67, I think it's fine in this game. But outside of that, there's really not much here.
Yeah, I think it's I think Jokic's ceiling is a little bit capped, right, with Jamal Murray back, which obviously if you click the game logs, you can see that, right? Jokic was in the 70s and 80s ceiling-wise. We haven't seen him surpass really like 60, 62, DraftKings point 61. Since Murray's been back, obviously it's a pretty limited sample since Murray's been back here. Jokic could do it but to your point, right, one of the easiest ways to get different is contrarian spend on a stud, because is there really that much difference between Jokic's ceiling and Luka's ceiling. Obviously, yeah, Luka doesn't have Kyrie to contest with, but it's still Jokic's team, right? It's Jamal Murray is not going out there and saying, Jokic, this is my team, right? I'm going to take over here. It's still Jokic's team. So $100 difference, 30 to 25 to 30% ownership difference as well. That's one way to get different right off the top. On the Nets side, I'm not really seeing much love at all on the Nets. Mikal Bridges is up to almost 9K. He's been pretty mid performance-wise as well. Cam Johnson, 6,600, really hasn't been playing good basketball at all. Dinwiddie, 76. With all three of those guys, it just seems like they all eat into each other where you're not seeing a ceiling performance out of them. So I think they just all take too much from each other. They just got too many ball handlers there. So it's basically Jokic or Jamal Murray or pass for me in that game, despite the decent total in that one.
Agree. Yeah, same page.
Let's jump into Oklahoma and Sacramento here in this one. In terms of the total here, 245, the largest total on the slate, and just a 2-point spread here. Obviously, this is where I was going with that Vucevic talk, right? Got Chet Holmgren, 7,400 here. Obviously, he's been letting down here, but you could see a little Mr. Chet get up in this game. Obviously, a massive total here. I really like a contrarian spend on this slate that's cheaper than the Jokic and Luka range. I like Mr. SGA here, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at sub 10% ownership against the Kings here in this spot. I really like this matchup for him. I think SGA could absolutely dust this slate. And he's 10-5, so it gives you a little bit of different roster construction than spending all the way up to Jokic or Luka, which I do think is a pretty common route that people are going to go on this slate, especially with the Luka side. So touch on SGA, touch on the Sacramento side. Obviously, a very close spread here. Largest total on the slate. Where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very appealing game from a fantasy perspective. I mean, it has the big total, 245, close spread. That's kind of, what we want. So I like getting multiple pieces of this game, multiple sides. I mean, Sabonis has a very nice price tag at 9,300. Kind of compared him to Jason Tatum earlier on, and then Jimmy Butler was in that same price range. Man, Sabonis, jumps off the page, and our projections obviously love him. 9,300. We're showing 50 projection for him. I think that's a very fair number. A lot of different ways to get there. SGA. 7-8%, like a great guy. I mean, he's the one. We have Luka, we have Jokic that we've talked about. He can compete with those guys for a little bit cheaper and lower ownership than a Luka. So I'm fine with him. De'Aaron Fox is coming in at like 3%. If you're building multiple teams, I don't hate getting some exposure to him. And then we have some, a little bit cheaper guys, Holmgren, like you talked about, very steady. I mean, you look at just his recent production, he's 34, 36, 26, 39, 30, 40, 50, like just very steady, 7,400. Fair price tag for him, does play that center position. Keegan Murray is a very solid value on the slate. We talked about those Utah guys. They're going to be pretty popular. And Murray's getting ownership as well, but 5,900. He's going to play a lot of minutes into the 30s, and his last couple games been very productive. So I like him at that 59. Jalen Williams is a play. Monk, maybe a little bit of Giddey. I just want a lot of pieces of this game. I mean, if it holds true to the 245 total and stays close, which it is projected to, you're going to want a couple of these guys on your team. So this will be a priority game for me. In tournaments to get some pieces of this game, some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I do want to bring up one piece, and I see a comment in the chat from Dustin, our guy, and I'm going to tie it into this game because if you go, one play that I missed out on here is Julian Strawther from the last game, the Denver-Brooklyn game. The reason I want to bring him up is he's sub 10% ownership right now, 4,600. You can play him at the small forward position. He played 28, 23 minutes. Yeah, he was very productive, right? Shot 6 of 11 from 3 in that 28 game. But even 23, I mean, he's picking up some rebounds. He's picking up assists. Obviously, there, 4,600. The reason I'm bringing him up is because I'm seeing Lou Dort at the same position here, 4,300. So if you spend $300 more than Lou Dort, you're getting a massive ownership discount. Click on Lou Dort. I don't want to sign up for a chalky Lou Dort here to get me 20 DraftKings points. And that just goes to the nature of the slate, right? Value's pretty tough. So people are landing on guys like Lou Dort because of the total. So I am definitely team Strother over Lou Dort. Lou Dort is definitely
Lou Dort 35%. Yeah, you're not kidding. Yeah, he's up there.
Lou Dort is definitely a piece that I want to be underweight on here. I'm definitely a team spend $300 more and go to Strother in a much better matchup. If you look at Lou Dort, right, Lou Dort is not a huge fantasy point per minute guy on FanDuel, maybe, right, with his steals and his defense upside there. But, I mean, this guy is not a huge guy. I mean, he scored 25 DraftKings points last night, and he scored 16 real-life points. So that just goes to show you in almost 40 minutes. Or in his last game against Golden State, right? I think that was an overtime game there, but played almost 40 minutes and scored 25 DraftKings points, and now he's going to be 35% owned due to the total and due to the nature of the slate. So I'm off Dort in this one, but I really like the studs a lot in this game. SGA is my favorite spend up on this slate. Really like him. Really like the ping pong if you can get to Sabonis. I'm definitely team Sabonis over De'Aaron Fox here. And then all these ancillary pieces like Jalen Williams, Keegan Murray, Chet Holmgren, I think all those guys are firmly in play. But I did want to really bring up the Lou Dort piece because that is definitely a talking point on the slate. And I do like that Strother pivot there. Strother pivot, excuse me, because Brooklyn does struggle against wings for sure. Next game, obviously, we got the next game is definitely an interesting one here, Hoop. It's only a 226 total, but again, very close spread here. In this one, Portland 3-point favorites here at home. And if you look at ownership, this is where all the ownership's going. You got Sexton, you got Taylor Horton-Tucker, you got Olynyk, and you got Anthony Simons. Obviously, if DeAndre Ayton misses again and Brogdon miss again, yeah, I'm team Anthony Simons all the way. The dude just absolutely chucks. He's going to play 37 to 40 minutes. 27 shot attempts, 21 shot attempts, 23 shot attempts. He's had double-digit three-point attempts in each one of the last 3 games. If those guys miss, obviously I'm definitely team Anthony Simons, really like him. But Ayton and Brogdon remain questionable. I haven't looked at shoot-around or anything. Obviously, I've been pretty tied up today, so if anyone in the chat wants to let me know if those guys missed shoot-around or if they had a shoot-around, that would definitely be helpful. But a lot of ownership going to this game. I mean, I'm seeing, 9 guys in double-digit ownership from Chris Dunn, Thibault, Fontecchio, Taylor Hendricks, Agbaji, Anthony Simons. A lot of ownership on this Utah side. Talk about this one. How do you want to break this down?
Yeah, these guys are going to get ownership. You see it mid-30s for all of them, and I think it definitely remains true. If you're playing some higher stake stuff, those numbers probably come up even higher. But they're just like necessary price tags on the slate, like the 5,700 for Sexton, the 5K for Horton Tucker, the 5,300 for Kelly Olynyk. We've talked about it. We don't have a ton of value on the slate, so you're almost forced to take a look at some of these guys to some degree. There's just really no way around it on the 7-game slate. We talked about it. Cleveland, Boston. There's not many plays in that game. Chicago, Miami. Not many plays in that game. Miami, Dallas. Like not many plays in that game that stand out. So you're just almost like forced into this a little bit, forced into these sort of plays. But I do like getting Simons though, because for that reason, if you are going to be heavy on the Utah side of things, you want something coming back on Portland, and man, like those are some nice numbers and very friendly for DraftKings scoring when a guy's shooting 11, 10, and 13 threes, like you pointed out, like 34 3-pointers in the last 3 games. Even if he shoots like shit and just a couple go in, that's a good number, and you get that bonus for the threes. So a lot to like here in Simons. I think he's a phenomenal play. In terms of the rest of the Portland guys, we got to see what's going on with Brogdon and Ayton. I believe they're still questionable. I haven't seen anything different. They're still sitting there listed as officially questionable. So I'm gotta see on that, maybe open up more. But I mean, this is a slate where you might want to backload as is, like you kind of already talked about with Cleveland, Boston kind of not being all that appealing. Chicago, Miami not being all that appealing. Slate could start at 8:30 Eastern if you really wanted, and just wait for all the news. So tough to avoid those Utah guys, how you use them, be careful though, because they will be popular. And then Portland need to see on Brogdon and Ayton, but either way, Simons, I think, is a phenomenal play.
I think I do like setting a rule here. I'm not too much a team rules guy, but every team I'm seeing, all three is Sexton, Horton Tucker, and Olynyk.
Yeah. When we ran those teams earlier, you look at it, I mean, they're in every one of the top 10 teams. If you just run an optimizer blindly, boom, 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 they're all in those teams. And a lot of teams will look like that. We talked about it when I put Luke in there and I put Kane in, just naturally fits to go to that 5K range and hit all three of those guys. And a lot of people will do it. It'd be very, very common to play those three together.
Yeah, I like setting a rule, max of two of those guys. And I really like max of one of Horton Tucker and Sexton. I'm definitely team Sexton all the way. I mean, if you look at his usage rate over the last 5 games, right, it's 27% usage rate over the last 5. You look at Taylor Horton Tucker's usage rate and Olynyk's usage rate, 15.5%. You look at Taylor Horton Tucker's usage rate, I mean, it's way down the board. So I'm just team Sexton over Horton Tucker a lot here, and ownership's going to be going crazy there. So I really like Sexton. Anthony Simons are the two chalk pieces I do want to hit on in this game. I like those two guys a lot. I mean, Anthony Simons since Brogdon's been out, right? I mean, 32% usage rate over the last games. I mean, those shot attempts off the charts. We know Simons, anytime he's out there from last year, right? Since he's returned back from injury, he's just chucking. So I really like him and Sexton. Olynyk's fine. Agbaji, if he starts at 4,500, again, his game log's pretty gross if you click on it. But, man, he shot 2 for 12 from the field last game, 1 for 5 for 3, put up 14 fantasy points with only 5 real-life points. He can pick you up some peripheral stats there, so I don't hate that. Overall, I mean, this is definitely a game where a lot of your pieces of your team are going to come from just due to pricing. I mean, you look at the pricing on this slate. If Brogdon's out, I mean, the most expensive guy on the slate is in this game is Shaedon Sharpe here, which that's another interesting piece. Let's talk on the Shaedon Sharpe real quick. Shaedon Sharpe versus Simons here, because they're $200 apart. Obviously, Simons' usage rate and shots and everything are off the chart here, but from an ownership standpoint, I'm seeing sub 5% ownership on Shaedon Sharpe, who's 18 shot attempts, 15, 17, 9 3-pointers, 10 3-pointers, 9 3-pointers. He's still chucking the basketball. He hasn't scored under 42 fantasy points in the last 5 games. That's kind of interesting there. I like that little.
Very appealing.
What do you think about that? That's a little.
I like
little
that
thing
call,
there.
man. 3% ownership, like that's a nice little call there. I mean, and not many people are going to go to him. The price tag's going to scare people off. Another nice thing is guard and forward eligible, so it offers some flexibility on those teams where you're going to play a lot of Utah. Get a low owned piece here that's kind of been going off. I think that's a good sneaky type play.
And I got another little sneaky pivot off of the Lou Dort at the same price point, 4,300. Remember when I said Lou Dort at 4,300? People want to go to him. Well, guess what? You can play Mr. Chris Dunn at 4,300 at the same shooting guard position in this game environment against Portland. Much better spot here. He could see 20 to 25 minutes. He's been very good. I like that little pivot there. I'm seeing about a third of the ownership on Chris Dunn compared to there. So I like the little Shaedon Sharpe, Chris Dunn little combo package off of the Lou Dort and a guy like Anthony Simons, right? That little 2v2. Tambo's always doing those 2v2s in terms of NFL. Yeah. I'll give the people a little 2v2 here. A little give me a little Shaedon Sharpe and Chris Dunn 2v2 to outscore Anthony Simons and Lou Dort. So that's one for the people out there. But obviously a great game here to target. And arguably, Hoop, outside of maybe 1 or 2 spots, you can make a case that the slate doesn't start until 9 p.m., right? Until that OKC Sacramento game.
Yeah. I mean, there's many routes. I mean, you can definitely find a full team with these last 3 games. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And, people will lock in guys before this, but you can build a team starting at, 10 Eastern and beyond.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the last game of the night here. Paul George is questionable in this one. Obviously, that's decent news, right? Gives some other guys like Zubac a little boost, and then Harden and Kawhi Leonard. If he's in, it's tough to go to these guys from a total standpoint. 232, so pretty healthy total here. Clippers are 5-point favorites at home here. Harden, Kawhi, Paul George, all priced right within, a couple $100 of each other. Break down those. Obviously, our projections like Kawhi the most right now as it stands. And then on the other side, you got Chris Paul, you got Steph Curry as another contrarian spend up that just hasn't really shown a massive ceiling so far this year, like he has last season. So hit on this one, late night hammer game here, pretty healthy total.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Not the most appealing. It would get better, obviously, if Paul George were to miss. So, the key to this one is if Paul George is out, then you can take a look at Kawhi and Harden, and I definitely want exposure to those guys. Like, there's no doubt about it. But after that, it just gets tough in this one. Like, Chris Paul's fine. Like you said, Steph Curry, it's just hard to play him over some of these other studs on the slate. Like, he's the same price as Sabonis. Like, I just have to play Sabonis over him. So it just makes it very difficult from that standpoint, but again, this situation is very contingent on what happens with Paul George, and another reason not to lock yourself in to some of these early games. Like, just wait for some of this news. You'll be able to build a good ass team that starts relatively late. So don't lock in anything and sacrifice roster construction when you don't have to. But, if Paul George is in, I'm not going to have much of this game. If he's out, I'll have Kawhi, I'll have Harden, but not much else, man. This, despite the high total, is not very appealing from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, from a DFS perspective, not super appealing. If you want a late night hammer, obviously people just like late night hammers, right, for the sake of just having one. But really, is it that much of a late night hammer compared to the OKC Sacramento and the Utah Portland game, which obviously much better pricing, much better spots personally here. So you could, Zubac, Kuminga, maybe if you want to grab a mid-tier play here. Kuminga, he's shown a ceiling, right? It's just very risky. You don't know what you're getting with him. But he does pick up peripherals, right? Double 2 games ago against OKC, and he shot only 10 for 21 from the field. He's just 5,400. He's probably my favorite play, just due to pricing. Zubac, I just really can't get to these Clippers without if Paul George is in. So really not that much of an appealing game for me. I think we narrowed it down pretty good. I do like that little 2v2 I gave. I see some guys in the chat, our guy Sean Sullivan, saying hot take. Hey, Sean, sometimes, obviously you can play the best plays and you can just build your cash team and just throw it in there and hope for the best. Or you can make a little 2v2 off of a pretty chalky, good play team. And that could be the difference between a min cash and shipping the whole tournament. So that's what we're trying to do. Obviously, Hoop and I could get on here and just tell you guys to play the highest owned plays and just play the same teams as everyone else. But we try to look for a little different angles that still make sense in the same game environment. So any final closing remarks here for this slate here, Hoop?
Yeah, busy night, obviously. We got the 7-game NBA slate. We got the showdown game as well. All our content will be up nice and early so you guys can digest it, get in the Discord, ask any questions that you have. So if you're not a member, get on over to SHIPITNation.com. Check it out. Full content for the NBA slate and the NFL showdown slate here tonight.
Yeah, we got you covered. I got the NHL stuff up there. I already recorded my video today, posted the slate plan. My core plays are going to go up for that. I'm going to throw my NFL cores up. I'm going to throw my NBA cores up. We're running triple duty out here, Hoop, today. But appreciate everyone in the comments section. Sean, I appreciate that. We're just trying to give you different angles. And obviously, I can definitely see it's a one night sample, right? I could definitely see those two guys definitely outscoring the other 2v2 for a very similar price point at way lower ownership. So that's going to do it for this NBA show here for Hoop, for myself. Good luck tonight in your contest. Hope to see those Ship It Nation logos at the top. Let's ship it.